Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. We get attached to certain brands and often become fiercely loyal to them. Think about Harley Davidson as an example. From bikes to tattoos to clothing and other merchandise, Harley customers are loyal to the brand. So how does this happen? And can we create a high level of brand loyalty with our customers? Well, on this episode, we're going to explore the power of emotion in our decisions and how you can increase customer engagement, loyalty, and growth in your business. Our guest is a husband and father, a brand and customer relationship strategist, a subject matter expert on behavioral science, and he enjoys running, reading, and building furniture. Please welcome the founder and chief strategist of Limbic Brand Evolution, Kevin Perlmutter. Kevin, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
What a fantastic intro. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to tell you, I am so excited about the topics we're going to cover. You and I had an opportunity to meet and have a conversation a while back, and I was just enthralled with what you do, your knowledge, your background, and it really is fascinating. So you clearly have had a very interesting career leading up to starting your own business. So why don't we start with you sharing a bit about your professional journey? And when you're doing that, also share with us when you first discovered an interest in the science of emotion and its impact on brand loyalty.
Yeah, it's been such an incredible journey, and I'm so glad we're starting there because that's what got me to where I am right now. I've always been about evolution. I've been about personal evolution. I've always looked at my career in phases. And I'm always looking for ways that I could take things to the next level. So over the course of my career, I would say that I'm in I would say very clearly that I'm in phase 4 right now, of having my own business and starting my own company. But the 3 phases before that really defined what I was all about, helped me move from one level to the next. So first phase was about 16 years. I was in advertising, and I worked with global brands. I worked for a few different ad agencies. And for me, that was a really interesting time to understand global marketing, understand how to work with people in different cultures, work across different brands, matrixed organizations, just getting a real tight feel for how to do business in this world of advertising, marketing, and branding. And then toward the end of that period, which was around the time the first iPhone launched, around 2007, I started to recognize that there was a shift happening. And it really wasn't about advertising anymore. People are focused on experiences. And advertising up to that point has been all there was to tell us what brands were about. But now all of a sudden we have iPhones, we have the mobile internet, we have apps, we have places where people can explain their experiences, share their experiences, and let people know what their brand experience was really like. And there was one of my favorite little headlines that came out of the New York Times. It was a cartoon or something in the New York Times back at about that time. And it was a picture, one of these caricature pictures. And the caption said, "Waiter, there's a fly in my soup, and I have an iPhone." And all of a sudden, one individual could take down a business with information. One individual could share their experience, and it could have dramatic impact on the way people were experiencing what they wanted to do next with that brand. So I saw that as a moment in time where I thought, I'm not sure straight up advertising is for me anymore. So I wanted to learn new skills. I wanted to go to where the action was. I wanted to be on the edge of the next frontier. And I went to Interbrand, which is a global brand consultancy. And I became a senior strategist, a lead strategist in their New York office. And I ran large pieces of client business. And in that role, it was completely agnostic as to what I was working on. It had nothing to do with advertising per se. I was developing brand strategy, brand identity. I was helping brands with their customer experience, employee engagement, product portfolio architecture, all kinds of things like that. And one of the things that I did there that I'm so proud of and I'm so happy I got to do, which is the antithesis of advertising and going exactly in the direction I wanted to go, was I created their first ever global customer experience practice. And this is a practice that was relatively new in 2007, 2008, 2009, in that time frame, where companies were starting to recognize we need to focus on customer experience as a discipline. They started having chief customer experience officers. Companies like Forrester and others were starting to have large practice areas on customer experience. So I became the customer experience person and scaled that thinking out to a large number of strategists and other interbrand offices, spoke at a few conferences, and wrote a lot for interbrand publications and other publications on the topic. And it really informed and elevated my journey in that phase two. The next opportunity I had was incredible as well. I got the chance to join a music studio, a strategic sonic branding music studio. And I joined as chief strategist and ultimately became chief innovation officer. And in that role, this company was creating sonic identity for brands using sound to describe a brand at a holistic level, to create small sounds for individual touchpoint experiences. We were defining, like a visual identity does for a brand, we were doing the same thing with sound. And with sound hits you at an emotional level. Sound touches you and makes you feel things instantly, subconsciously. And we were creating strategies for brands and experiences rooted in how you wanted people to feel at every moment they interacted with that experience. One of the things that I got a chance to do there was create a behavioral science-based, a neuroscience-based research capability. I did this with a wonderful outside partner, and we created a custom capability for this business that I worked for that allowed us to assess the impact and effectiveness of music and sound and other stimulus at the subconscious level. How does it affect us emotionally? What does it convey instinctively in terms of meaning and associations? And then how does that correlate to actual behavioral intent? What am I going to do now that I feel this way? So we created this study. In my tenure there, we had 20 plus client projects. We were published in Wired magazine. We used it to assess music and sound for all different types of experiences and new experiences, brand experiences. We won an innovation award from the Corporate Research Conference for the most innovative capability in 2018. And I grew this incredible appreciation for behavioral science and the power of emotion that I layered on top of being a brand strategist from Interbrands who created a customer experience practice. And in 2019, I was like, I got to do something with this. There are so many brands, so many marketers out there, big brands, big marketers that are just ignoring or under leveraging the power of emotion. So I dug deeper into it and I decided to launch my own thing.
Phenomenal. And it's so interesting when you're able to look back now and see the phases that you, as you described it, and how each one really provided you the necessary learnings, the stepping stones, the insights, the research, the knowledge, and the experience to get to where you are today to launch your own business. And it's, sometimes when we're in the middle of it, we don't see that kind of perspective, but what you're doing today and how you've married all these different areas together, it makes perfect sense. It's incredible.
Thank you.
And First of all, thank you for sharing that. And there might be a couple pieces of your background that we'll come back to, but I'd love for you to share with us then today. You launch your own business, and you launched this business last year.
Yeah, early
Correct?
2019.
Okay, early 2019.
Oh, that's not
And
last year anymore.
yeah,
That's right.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah, we're already in
So, but
2021.
just under 2 years, yes.
Perfect. And there is there is a very specific meaning behind Limbic Brand Evolution. So I'd love for you to share with us a couple of things. What was the catalyst to start the business? And share with us the experience itself of making the decision to walk away from the career that you had and making that entrepreneurial leap. So what was the mindset? What were you thinking about? What was the experience like for you? And talk about the name, because it's very
Yeah.
powerful.
I'm going to start with the getting there, and then we'll come around to the name. So first of all, I have been entrepreneurial for as long as I've been able to walk. So for me, having autonomy and being someone who can drive change and to a certain extent set my own path has always been a part of who I am. So this last opportunity that I had before starting my own company was at the music studio was a wonderful opportunity because I had a lot of autonomy. I was the first ever chief strategist. I was the first ever chief innovation officer. I created the first research capability, and I actually was able to, and my job was to create a lot of firsts for that company. My internal job description was Kevin is here to help us do things we've never done before. That's what was my role. So after being there for 4.5 years, when you're doing things that you've never done before, they've never done before, and your job is to build it, scale it, drop the mic, walk away, do something else, I started getting further and further and further away from my core. The core, and my core has been a brand strategist, and it's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I wanted to get back to. So the catalyst for me, first off, was realizing I wanted to go back closer to the core of who I am as a brand strategist without going backwards in my career. I wasn't going to go back to another competitor of Interbrand and be a strategist there and have the same job I had before at a different company. That wasn't my goal. So the journey, the catalyst was actually to figure out what that next phase was going to be for me. And I'm very intentional about those phases. So I started to think about that. I did a little workshopping of what I wanted this new phase to look like, and I did some strategy work on myself. And I figured out that I have this perspective now, this behavioral science perspective, this emotion-based perspective, this experience design perspective. And I really just wanted to figure out, how do I channel that into something that doesn't exist? And the idea for me was, well, it's probably time for me to be out on my own, because the other part of going to another job was, I don't know if I was going to find another job that was going to give me the autonomy that I enjoyed in my most current role. And I didn't want to lose that autonomy. I didn't want to lose that control over what I do every day and my time and all of those things. So the only way to really accomplish that without taking a risk on some other job was to start my own thing. And it wasn't something I've contemplated for a long time. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought I would ever do. But when I, cleared the desk and said, well, what am I going to do? And what matters to me? What matters most to me in my life and my career? I realized that, and I'll give credit to a friend or two who I've had conversations with at that time, who had taken that step already and gave me a little bit of insight into what it's like to have your own business, and the puts and takes of that versus having a job where you're working for someone else. And I started to recognize the benefits of being independent, and that some of the stresses I was worried about, like getting business and stuff like that, were actually replacing stresses that you have when you're with somebody else. Like, do they like me? Are they going to keep me around? These types of stresses kind of replaced stuff, as opposed to adding stress. So for me, it was the right moment in my life, in my career. I'm fortunate. My wife is a teacher. She has great benefits. My daughters are both in college now, and and we're in good shape. So for me, it was the right moment to do this. So when it came to figuring out what it was going to be, it was not going to be Kevin Perlmutter, freelance brand strategist. I wanted to build a brand. I wanted the brand to have distinct expertise and value. I wanted to start building intellectual property around what it is that I'm creating. And I wanted to create a brand that I could be proud of, knowing that I've created and evolved brands my whole career for some pretty incredibly large companies. I needed to feel that when people I encountered saw what I was up to, that it came off as polished as it needed to be. So the first thing was figuring out what that was going to be all about. And clearly it's about the intersection of emotion and brand and emotional motivation, meeting brand desire and those types of things. So one of the things was the idea. The other thing was the name, and then was the identity, and then was the launch. So the name, batted around a lot of different names, and naming a company is a tough job. And I am very good friends with some people who have named some pretty well-known companies and brands in the world. And again, sought some advice and also wanted them to be proud of me when it was done. So as it turned out, I came across the name, the word limbic, which relates to the limbic system in our brain. And actually, credit where credit is due. My brother-in-law was the first one to speak the words to me. He's in the medical profession, and said, "Well, what about limbic?" It's like, Wikipedia, limbic. Oh, okay. This makes perfect sense, because the limbic part of our brain controls emotion, motivation, behavior, and memory at the subconscious level. It actually instinctively captures stimulus, what's going on around you, may or may not trigger a conscious response, but when it does, that's where the trigger comes from. So the limbic part of our brain is what my business is all about. And then I went through an exercise of, what do I pair it with? Limbic this, limbic that. How does it? And Limbic Brand Evolution, as I started with, evolution is very much in keeping with me, how I live my life, always progressing to the next level, always trying to learn something new and bring something with me that I can have distinct value in. And it just seemed like the perfect fit. It's the way I work with my clients, branding, brand strategy, companies. It's an evolutionary process that really doesn't end, but there is an opportunity to always tweak and improve.
I love it. I truly do. I remember when I was first researching you before we connected and had our initial conversation, when I heard the name of the business, it just instantly sent a spark and just a really interesting amount of energy through me. And a lot of that is because of my own study of the brain science, the limbic system. And it just really got me excited to look at how you were building the business around the intersection of emotion, response, loyalty, all these different areas. So it makes perfect sense. And it's so clear that it was intentional now that we've had a few more conversations. So I'd love to dig into the psychology behind decision making, as well as brand loyalty. And why should that matter to us? Why should that matter to our audience?
Well, the reason why it should matter to our audience is because people make decisions primarily from an emotional response. There's a lot of rational thought that goes into some decisions, a lot of decisions, but by and large, we're operating on instinct. We're operating on feelings. We encounter something, we get a gut feeling, we stick around or we move on, and this happens all the time. It's been said that as much as 95% of the decisions we make happen in the subconscious part of our brain. That's been talked about. That's been reported quite widely. There are some people who debate the actual number, but a massive amount of decision making is happening in the subconscious part of our brain. And it's always built around the context of our environment. You walk into a drugstore in a city at 7:30 in the morning. The only reason why is because you probably have a headache or something, and you need something for that, and you don't have it on hand, and you're on your way to work. And the second you walk through the door, you walk through the vestibule, and the buzzer goes off to alert the staff that you've arrived, and it's ringing in your ear. And then the door closes behind you, and you're walking through, and there's music playing that shouldn't be playing at 7:30, 8:30 in the morning. And then get to the bay of self-serve registers, and there's this cacophony of registers talking to you all at the same time, and they're not in sync. And then you leave the store, and that buzzer goes off again in your ear, and it's like, wow, people just sometimes don't think about the impact that kind of an experience has on people. You leave the store in a worse mood than you came, and you're not even sure why, because your insides were sort of dealing with stimulus. Now, take that to the level of customer experiences that you consciously experience, where you have really frustrating moments, and those are all things that affect us on a daily basis. So yeah, I'm going to stop there for a second and continue on with what else where I should go next with that.
Yeah. Well, you did an excellent job of painting that picture of the experience that we have on a subconscious level that we really don't even think about. And it reminds me of what happens when we're consuming negative content, or consuming too much news, or surrounding ourselves with negative people, or people that just
Yeah.
suck our energy. And we don't always realize what a massive impact that's having on our psyche, and how it's creating a ripple effect and impacting our decisions,
Yeah.
impacting the way that we communicate with others, the way that we show up to the world, the way we show up to our family and our friends. And so it makes perfect sense what you're explaining. So let's take it to the branding side, and how psychology and behavioral science, and let's focus on the emotional side, how brands use that, or can use psychology and behavioral science as a way to make better connections and create better customer experiences.
So one of the most important things that I like to think about is what matters most to people. What are people emotionally motivated by? The biggest question that I help my clients answer is, why should people care about your brand? I mean, it's that simple. I look back at all the work that I've done for my clients, and the whole time that I'm working on their behalf and providing them with recommendations, I'm trying to provide solutions for why people should care more about their brand. And that comes from two sides. So one thing I help my clients do is I help them focus. I help them focus on what makes their work, their brand, their business unique and desirable in the world. Why do they exist? What are they doing to make people's lives better? And how can we express that in a way where people will feel the energy, feel what it's all about, and feel compelled, drawn in to check it out? So that's one thing I help them do.
Can
Yeah,
I
go
ask
ahead.
you, can I ask you a question on that point?
Yeah.
So when you're working with a client for the first time, in your experience since you started your business, do you find that most of those that you're working with, have they been able to identify why their brand matters? Are they able to articulate that clearly, or is that really where they need you to guide them and ask them the right types of questions to be able to pull that out of them?
There are a variety of situations that I encounter. I mean, all businesses, all brands are trying to communicate the best they can, and often think they're doing a good job, and often they are doing a good job. But a few things happen along the way. Sometimes they see it differently than the outside world sees it because they're in it. Sometimes they are overly focused on generic benefits, category benefits, benefits that their competition also talks about. I'm working with one client right now in a category where somehow three brands in the category are using the exact same benefit points on their respective websites. And I actually think they might have been using the same marketing company that resold the same content 3 times. Very strangely, how this is happening, I can't even understand it. But that's a very abnormal situation. Primarily, business people are not marketers. They're not branders. They're not focused on storytelling. They're not really as good at looking from the outside in and understanding what it is that they're doing that is so wonderful. So, and I'm not intuitive. I can't just figure that out by meeting them. I have a very inquisitive process. I spend a lot of time talking with my clients, talking with their employees, talking with their customers, trying to open up my understanding of what it is that this business is doing to stand out, what makes them unique and desirable in the minds of the people that encounter it. And then I'm a halfway decent dot connector. I could aggregate all this information. I could see patterns. I could pull things together. I could simplify complexity and start to bring out what's really important from the story. On the other side of it, so there's that's the focus side of it. But the second thing I'm doing for my clients is I'm helping them connect. So I'm helping them by understanding the motivations, the needs, desires, unmet needs of the people that they want to reach. So I'm looking at whether I'm doing primary research, where I'm conducting research with an outside company, or I'm doing qualitative interviews with customers, or I'm in some categories, there's so much data and research already published. For instance, I worked with an environmental business that deals with environmental energy efficiency upgrades. And there's so much documented research on the behavioral psychology of why people will invest in energy efficiency upgrades and why they will not, and how cognitive biases play a role in those decisions, and how you can deploy certain means of communication and sharing information that'll inspire greater decision making in your favor. These are things that you can learn and apply to how people make decisions and what people care most about. And what I'm doing at all points is I'm looking at the focus side and I'm looking at the connect side. I'm looking at what the business is all about, why they're unique and desirable. I'm looking at the customer, what they care about, what they need and want in life. They're not walking around looking for brands. They're walking around looking to alleviate stress and have a better life. If a brand can intersect that, all the better. And the term that I've created and the term that I use for this intersection is limbic sparks. And limbic sparks happen when emotional motivation meets brand desire. So I'm looking to help my clients create what I call limbic sparks. And that strategic foundation that can create limbic sparks can be the foundation for how a brand comes to life. It's the strategic platform that informs new experiences, evolved communications, maybe even new product and service offerings, but all ways where this brand can really understand what it is that makes the people they want to reach tick and express themselves in a way that'll be instinctively desirable.
I love the term limbic sparks. I would only venture to guess that you've trademarked that.
Registration came through about a month ago. Very happy.
Fantastic. Excellent. So what, in terms of the process when you're onboarding a client and you're having these engaging conversations and really digging deep and gathering all of these different data points, can you give an approximate timeline from the time that someone first starts working with you to the time that they start to see some results of the work that you're doing together? I'm sure it varies, but just on average.
It varies quite a bit depending upon the size of the company, the number of stakeholders, the rigor that goes into the process. But there are things that I've done to help businesses and brands even like say pro bono things that I've done for friends who are in business that could happen in a few conversations, in a few weeks, a few work sessions. But more than likely, it's at least it's usually a 2-month process plus or minus, just to really get started, to get the strategy foundational work done with a small business or an entrepreneur or someone who's just not a lot of layers of management, not a lot of layers of stakeholders. This work can be done 6 weeks, 8 weeks, give or take, to get us to that strategic foundation. If it's a larger company, maybe it's a 3-4 month project to get there because of the amount of rigor, the amount of stakeholders, the amount of sell through. And then once that foundation is created, there are opportunities to extend the work into activating those recommendations. There could be activation plans for how customer experiences are evolved. There could be work developed to strengthen customer relationships through new programs that I could be part of developing. There's lots of copy that needs to be rewritten in the new brand voice and to express the emotional benefits that we land on. So it's one of those things where a lot of the clients that I work with, they start as this 6 week to 3 month process. And then oftentimes it'll extend into future phases of work.
I see. That makes sense. So you'll provide them a roadmap or a blueprint, if you will, based on this initial the 6 weeks, however many months it is. And then if they actually want to take that blueprint or that roadmap and execute on those items, those are the things that you can also help as added services.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what you said is the case. But the other bit of information is that we're creating brand story, we're creating language along the way. So a lot of what I'm helping them figure out about themselves and about their customers can be immediately applied in real time. They don't have to wait for the full strategy blueprint to actually start using information. When they learn new things about what their customers care about, that can be worked into conversations the next day. When they start figuring out new ways to talk about what they're really good about and what they're excited about, emotionally motivated by, that could be worked into those conversations. Sometimes I'm working with, oftentimes I'm working with brands, companies. Sometimes I'm working with an agency. Like I'm helping a company that's larger than mine that does something different than brand strategy, figure out their own strategy. And in those cases, there have been times where not only am I helping them start to figure out how to communicate in pitches and proposals and new business presentations to future clients, but I'm also helping them sometimes in the room. Sometimes I'm helping them strengthen client relationships that they have that are organic. Because a lot of what I'm doing, as you started off, you said I'm a brand and customer relationship strategist, and I really look at both sides of that. I'm creating the brand strategy, but I'm also helping the people I work with navigate stronger, deeper relationships where people are more invested in them.
Interesting. How do you measure success, client success? So if someone is working with your business, what are those metrics of success for the client? Is it revenue? Is it number of new client acquisitions, client retention, all of the above? What types of KPIs do you look at?
Yeah, ultimately, it's a combination of all of those things. I mean, the first and foremost thing is when people start working with me, they recognize that they have a challenge. They recognize that their brand voice is not authentic to who they want to be. Maybe it's gotten off course a little bit. They recognize that their ability to retain or get new customers is not where they want it to be. They recognize that their conversion from an initial proposal to future stages of work where some of those recommendations are activated are not they're not converting as much as they want them to. So the KPI is different for each client. The first thing that I care a lot about is that when I'm working with a client and they start to understand their customers more, and they start to see better ways to communicate with them and have more positive, productive conversations with them, and they start to see the way they're presenting their own business and themselves in a way that lights them up because it finally allows them to speak about themselves in a way that reflects why they started the business in the first place and what they currently care most about. For me, that's the very first KPI, is that they are starting to be a better reflection of who they want to be, and people are gravitating toward it. Beyond that, there are lots of KPIs. There's the things that relate to how engaging communications are, whether or not people go further and deeper into conversations, whether they're able to extend initial client relationships into longer term client relationships. These are all KPIs that I care a lot about and that my clients hire me to help them resolve.
Wonderful. So let's get tactical and see if we can provide just a couple of strategies or things that the business community, anyone that's watching and listening to this, things that they can start to ask themselves, some very specific questions, some things maybe they should be talking to their customers about, ways that they can look to improve that customer experience within their own business. If you can just share maybe a few tactical things that they can start to apply immediately, that would be wonderful.
Certainly. One of the things that I think is most important is to understand why their current customers like their brand, why they keep coming back for more. I stated that one of the primary questions that I help my clients answer is, why should people care about your brand? So one of the first places to look for that answer is look at the people who care about your brand and understand why they are there, why they keep coming back. I sometimes work with clients where they tell me why people should care about their brand. And then I speak with their customers and find out, well, some of that is true. Their customers actually have other reasons for caring about their brand. So the word care is also very, very specific. I mean, care relates to feeling, relates to emotion. Why people care about something is the first thing that I want to understand. What are they looking to achieve? Is that being met? Is it not being met? So doubling back half a step, the questions that are most important is to understand what's driving your current customer behavior. If they're happy, if they're satisfied, if they're loyal, why? Find out why. And if they're not, if they're walking away too often, find a way to learn why. Why don't they care about your brand? What is it that they need to know that was different? What was the experience that they had that turned them off? Because most people won't tell you spontaneously, and it's even hard to get it out of them when you ask, because they don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, even though they're a little unhappy. But knowing where the bottlenecks are and knowing where the good things are is something great to build upon. The other things that they can do is start to think about themselves and their business. What is their best day? What are the things that they do to improve the lives of the people that they're trying to reach? How can what they're doing improve people's lives in new and different ways, especially when things in the world change? A lot of businesses this past year have had trouble. No doubt, there's so much going on in the world because of this pandemic, and so many businesses are struggling. But there are a few brand examples out there where they were able to recognize, well, the old way of business is not actually going to go so well. So we need to adapt, and we're going to adapt in ways that are going to help us create stronger connections with the people we want to reach in new and different ways. So one example is, I just wrote an article about this in Branding for Branding Mag, and I'm trying to remember the examples that I use. So one example was Build-A-Bear Workshop. So Build-A-Bear Workshop I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there's several hundred stores located in malls, mostly in the US. And the whole experience is kids coming into this workshop, and they pick out an unstuffed teddy bear, and they get clothes for it, and they get patches, and they get all these things that they want to put on it, and they then stuff it. There's a big stuffing ceremony where they put the fluff in it, and they sew it up, and they have this bear. Well, imagine this business in this pandemic. They had to close a lot of stores for quite a while. They accelerated in the last year a digital transformation plan where they were actually starting to do some of the things, offer some of the things that they offer in the store in an online environment. And another friend of mine happens to be a service provider for them. He has a patent on some technology that allows you to record your own voice, and those voice recorders are actually embedded in their bears when you pay for that. So what they were able to do now was combine the online experience of creating a custom bear with this voice recorder that they also have in the stores. But online, you can record your own voice. You could say, "Hey, Grandma, I miss you." And that your voice on that chip can be embedded in a bear that could then be shipped to a loved one. So they made a big difference by understanding that the store experience wasn't going to go forward as much as they'd want it to in this time, but the online experience can be dramatically improved and accelerated and become a core part of their business. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they did a significant amount more business online than ever before in this environment. That's just one example.
Yeah, there are plenty of them out there when you're looking for them. It's really remarkable to see how innovative people have become when we're in a situation where we're almost forced to look at doing things differently, and we're forced to look at changing and adapting. We have a remarkable capability of being able to do so if we're looking at things through the right set of lenses, right? If we're looking for solutions and we're asking good questions and we're surrounding ourselves with others who are solutions focused versus only looking at the problems and the challenges that I have.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting story. And as I look around the business community, nationwide as well as worldwide, you're seeing some excellent examples of iteration, of adapting, of coming up with new and better ways. And what's so important to that, which you've certainly emphasized here, is the connection to what the customer wants.
Yeah.
That emotional connection, being able to understand why your customer is doing business with you and understanding what their needs are, right?
Yeah.
And then once we're asking those types of questions, but it's also important to realize that things are always changing. So even if we are collecting those data points and we believe that I understand this now, it's going to continue to evolve and continue to change. So we always have to continue to ask those meaningful questions.
It's so true. And so much research has been, and analyst reports have come out to support these things this year that, I'm going to give you specifics on that in a second, but, nearly 2 years ago, I decided to launch a business focused on emotional connection and emotional motivation and what people care most about. And, every business has had its own challenges given the pandemic, but the pandemic has actually made a lot of the ways that I'm approaching things more relevant than ever before, because our lives have been turned upside down. People's behaviors, people's needs, people's emotions have changed, and the ability and the need for brands to be adaptive is super important. Gartner just released for 2021, their 4 key competencies that companies need to have. And the first one is customer understanding, and the second one is adaptive planning. Deloitte has talked about the fact that understanding and recognizing emotional needs and having emotional data is one of the most important opportunities for companies, and companies that connect with people on an emotional level. Forrester has reported time and time again is going to be the largest driver of loyalty. Emotion is the largest driver of loyalty in the customer experience.
It's incredible.
One last stat.
Yeah.
Harvard Business Review has documented that customers are 52% more valuable if they are emotionally connected to your brand versus customers that are highly satisfied. So think about all the brands.
Wow.
For our whole life, customer brands have been saying, "Are you highly satisfied?" And it's not enough. They could be 52% more valuable if they go beyond highly satisfied to emotionally connected at a good level. It's just really interesting stuff.
Wow. So for those
So
that are
the
watching
ROI
and
is
listening, yeah. Oh my gosh. So for those that are watching and listening to this, I hope that you heard that point that was just made, because that's a huge one. That's a huge one, and that's something that we can all do, right? We can all understand the emotional side. We can get closer to our customers. We can find out what's going on in their world, and talk more about how our brand and our businesses solve problems, right? Get to know our customers on a deeper level. That's
yeah.
that's remarkable. And it takes me back to the example that I gave at the opening, Harley Davidson.
Hmm.
You look at a case study. I remember studying Harley Davidson when I was in college, and what they've been able to accomplish when it comes to brand loyalty and creating those raving fans. And there are other companies out there as well, but when you think about one where a customer is willing and wants to tattoo your name, your brand
Yeah.
name on their body,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
That's loyalty and
That's
to the
loyalty.
extreme.
And that particular brand, that type of experience, that has a lot to do with aligning with shared values. How shared values between your brand and what your customers care about. If there's alignment there and you can demonstrate and leverage that alignment, that's another a really cool way to draw connection. One of the other brands that I featured in that last article that I wrote is Electrolux appliances, and they, in speaking with my contact there, who I quoted in the article, they very much have a brand strategy that's rooted in sustainability. And their core audience are people who believe in sustainable living, but
Mm,
want to do so without sacrificing style, design, and quality. So they have a whole brand program and design program and innovation program that's rooted in catering to the values of people who want to live a sustainable life, but not sacrifice along the way.
beautiful. I love it. I truly do. It's just incredible. So, what is one of the most important lessons that you've learned from failure?
Well, I think the most important lesson I've learned from failure is that it's an opportunity to think about what's next, and the rebound can be um, better than where you left off.
Excellent. So, it's all about how you frame it in this
Yeah.
story that you tell yourself, and what can I take away from this and learn from it, versus allowing it to stop me from moving
Oh,
forward.
failure should never stop you for more than a few days or a week, maybe. But it definitely is an opportunity for reflection. It's an opportunity to look and say, all right, what is it that it's an opportunity to evolve and fine tune, really. So if there was failure, it's because something was going on that was no longer right for you. It wasn't hitting your strengths. It wasn't giving you the ability to be your best self. And either you realized it and left, or it caught up with you and you had to leave. Whatever the reason is, you have an opportunity to look back and say, this is what I loved about that situation and past situations. This is what I'm really good at. This is what the world needs right now, and what I can deliver in a way that can create more value for myself and for the people who receive it. And if you can take the time to focus on that, what people care most about, that could be part of your evolution.
Very well said. So I know that you're an avid reader, and you and I talked about some books in our last conversation, but I would love for you to share 1 to 2 books that have had a significant impact on you personally.
Let's see. Nine Lies About Work is one that I really enjoy. So this book is written by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall. And what it does is it breaks down some of the myths of corporate life, about how corporations work. and it talks about leadership. It said there are myths around what makes a great leader, and they say that the only consistent trait between great leaders is that they know how to inspire followers and they surround themselves with great people. It talks about there's another myth that I'll do the last one. There's another myth around the best plan wins. So they talk about the fact that a lot of corporations believe that you do your strategic planning, you put together a great plan, it's wrapped up in mid-November, and then it is your plan for the next year. Well, that's a myth, because it's not the best plan that wins, it's the best intelligence that wins. And that's super important, because intelligence allows you to be adaptive, it allows you to change, it allows you to move forward. So what I really like about this book is that it has a lot of other myths that fit and are very in keeping with the kinds of things that I believe to be true. Trying to think there, I'm gonna actually go way backwards. So I'm gonna go to another book that I read probably 20 plus years ago, and it's over there somewhere. It's Jack Welch's Straight from the Gut. And it might have been, there was another Jack Welch book as well. I forget
Winning.
which one it was.
Winning was the other one.
It might have been Winning, but there's a quote. There are 3 quotes that come from 1 or 2 of those Jack Welch books that really got me going in my thinking. One of the quotes is, see reality as it is, not as you wish it would be. And the other one is something like, confidence gives you the ability to do more than you ever thought possible. And those 2 quotes stick with me in my career, and they came from books that I read very early on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing those. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So what are you doing to challenge yourself today to grow personally and professionally?
It's a great question. I am drinking coffee. I am staying energized, and I'm just continuing to go after all the things that I can go after. So one of the most important things that I could do as an independent business owner who is trying to educate my field on emotional insights and why it's so important. I feel like I'm selling a category as well as my own business. One of the things that I'm doing to challenge myself is to continue to be a thought provider, to be someone who's writing articles, being on podcasts like this. I'm active on social media, and I'm putting myself out there in a way where I'm sharing what I know, I'm sharing ideas, I'm sharing advice, and I'm giving it away so that people can take it for what it's worth and use it, or call me or not call me. But I really enjoy putting my thoughts out there. So I'm challenging myself to be on top of the latest information, the latest studies, the latest behavioral science things that I need to be aware of. And I'm always, in the spirit of always evolving, I'm always trying to improve my own game and have new things to share.
Fantastic. Well, you clearly are making a difference. There's no question about it. So absolutely.
Thank you.
What would be the overarching message that you'd like to leave our audience with?
The overarching message is that when you're running a business, you want to be sure that you're creating desire for what you're all about. And that's a very personal thing. You want to be sure that your brand is having an impact on the way they think, on the way they feel, and they're seeing something in you that they can actually want to go after. You want to answer the question, why should people care about your brand? And have an answer that people respond to.
Outstanding. So before I ask my final question to you, please share where we can connect with you and where can we consume the content and the writings and your blogs and all the wonderful things you're doing.
Thanks. The best way to see all of that is to check out my website, which is limbicbrandevolution.com. That's LIMBIC brandevolution.com. It talks about my practice. It talks about how I approach my work. It talks about limbic sparks. And I have a Get Inspired section where every article I've published and podcasts that I've been on are published as well.
Fantastic. Well, we will make sure that we link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
So here's my final question for you. So what are you adding or eliminating from your life to live more fulfilled and with greater purpose?
I'm focusing on the things that matter most. I'm focusing on my family. I'm focusing on my hobbies. I'm running as much as I can. I'm building furniture as much as I can. I'm focusing on the things that I want to do that I've never had the time to do when I was working a full-time job and commuting to New York City. I recently became a board member of a nonprofit called Rise, which is a community services nonprofit in central New Jersey that helps families that are in need, helps them have the food they need, helps them have access to the goods that they need, and helps them have services that allow them to rise up and get beyond their current challenges. So for me, joining that board in the last 6 months has been a very fulfilling thing that I've been wanting to do. And I'm focusing on working with the kinds of clients that I enjoy working with, and keeping my practice small and just being selective and enjoying what I do.
Out of curiosity, what is your favorite type of furniture to build?
Well, it's furniture for my own home is the category. So I've built I've built an armoire. I've built a kitchen island. I've built a few different coffee tables, TV stands, end tables, that kind of stuff. I've built the bookshelf behind me, but that was a long, long time ago. One of my first pieces, very simple. I just enjoy changing it up, having an attention for detail. Making a plan, constructing it, finding the right wood, and just using it every day and enjoying it.
Multi-talented. How about
Love
that?
it. Having fun.
Having fun. So Kevin, thank you so very much for spending some time with us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I'm grateful for you. I truly appreciate you sharing of your knowledge and your experience and bringing so much wisdom to us. And I can't wait to continue our conversations together and see where we can grow together. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for bringing me on.
It is absolutely my pleasure. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And please take a moment to subscribe. And we would love it if you would share with both Kevin and I what you liked most about this episode. What were one or two takeaways that were important for you? And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help your service-based business, just visit jayshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Create some limbic sparks.
Yeah.
And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear
Jay Shear Business Consulting.